Welcome to Somerset Community College. We are glad that you're here this morning. We have got a fantastic program for you today. How many people have ever met a real astronaut? A couple of people have. Good. Well, today you're going to have the opportunity to do just that. At this time, I would like to introduce to you the president of Somerset Community College, Dr. Joe Marshall. Dr. Marshall?
Thank you, John, and welcome to all of you. We are delighted to have you on our campus today. How many of you have not been on our campus before? It's your first trip? A few. Well, those of you who've been here more than 2 times, how many have been here more than 2 times? Good. So you show the newcomers around, if you will, and tell them that this is the best college in the whole area. And we hope that you will be making plans to come to us full time. We have a lot of programs in the meantime for high school, for middle school and high school students. And we hope that you will apply for those and get involved in them. Have you been involved in a program before here? Yes. Which one? Which one? Somebody tell me. Anybody been in G-Tech? All right. How about GEMS? Look at that. Oh. This is a wonderful program for those of you who are interested in the space program and being an astronaut, or even getting to know what it takes to be one or to support one. We are just delighted today that Congressman Rogers' office worked with us and was able to get us the very best of the group. We are just extremely excited to have him here today, and I think you will agree with me after you meet him. So, welcome to Somerset Community College. Who knows what year this is that we've been with the college's birthday this year? Which one? Which one?
60 years.
No, not quite. It's 50 years. This is our 50th year. We got started in 1965, and you will find that we have a lot in common with our national United States space program. So that's part of our emphasis today, and Bruce Gover will tell you more about that. But we're delighted to have you, and we hope you enjoy this as much as we know you're going to enjoy having you here. Thank you.
At this time, we'd invite you to please stand and place your hands on your heart for the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance this morning is going to be led by one of our students here at Somerset Community College. Justin Yaza is a veteran. He served 6 years in the Air Force and 5 years in the Army studying criminal justice with our police students here at Somerset Community College. And at this time, I'd ask Justin to come forward and lead us in the pledge. Justin?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Justin. It's an absolute honor for me this morning to introduce our speaker to you. Chris Cassidy is an award-winning, nationally recognized man who grew up in Maine. He completed Naval Academy Prep School in Newport, Rhode Island. He received a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics from the U.S. Naval Academy and a Master of Science in Ocean Engineering from MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Prior to his career with NASA, Cassidy served for 10 years as a member of the U.S. Navy SEALs team, achieving the rank of captain in the U.S. Navy. In 2004, Cassidy was selected as an astronaut by NASA. From 2006 through 2008, he served as capsule commander in the Mission Control Center. During his NASA career, Cassidy completed 6 spacewalks totaling 31 hours, 14 minutes, he accumulated 182 days in space. He is currently in charge of the EVA branch within the astronaut's office. Please join me in welcoming our speaker this morning. He is dressed appropriately. So can we welcome Commander Cassidy this morning with a chant of Go Big Blue! Go Big Blue! Go Big Blue!
Thank you very much. I thought I was in Louisville. No, just kidding. I have Kentucky in my bracket, so we're all set. Really excited to be here and share with you guys about space and the fortunate experiences that I've been able to have in my time as an astronaut. One of the real pleasures for me is going out to speak to students just like you guys and talk about this. So I'll talk for a little bit. I have a video to show, and then we'll have some time for questions, because that's the most engaging and fun for both of us to hear what you guys have on your mind. So as he mentioned, I grew up in a small town in Maine. I was not a kid with space shuttles stuck to my wall and dreaming about spaceships or anything like that. I was just a normal guy playing sports and doing as best I could in school, trying to be a good friend. And during the process of high school, trying to figure out where was I going to go to college, I read about this place called the Naval Academy. And it looked, back in those days, it was a big giant book that you go to the guidance counselor and you flip through all these pages. And they had really cool pictures of the Naval Academy grounds, and the people looked all impressive in uniforms. And then at the bottom it said, it's free to go there. So I thought, oh, I need to apply there. And found myself going down that path. Nobody in my family had ever been in the military really before. So it was sort of uncharted territory for me. And then I got accepted to the Naval Academy Prep School, which is a one year after high school where you go and you kind of get ready for the Naval Academy. And that was a great thing for me. I matured a lot, got to the Naval Academy, and had no problem with those 4 years. During those 4 years, I met, there was a Navy SEAL motivator type person on the staff. And in interactions with that guy, I was very impressed and inspired about maybe did I have what it takes to try out for the SEAL teams. And so I did, and found myself graduating through SEAL training a year after the Naval Academy, and then I spent 10 years in the SEAL teams, living between Norfolk, Virginia, and San Diego, California. That's a whole nother talk about all that stuff. But during that time, during those 10 years, is when I met another astronaut who had previously been in the SEAL teams. His name is Bill Shepard. He happens to have been the first commander of the space station. And in talking to him, I realized, you know what? My background is very similar to his. If he got selected as an astronaut, why can't I? What do I have to lose? There's very basic requirements to apply as an astronaut. You have to be a U.S. citizen, and you have to have some medical, there's some medical stuff you can't do anything about. Either you pass it or you don't. But other than that, a bachelor's degree in some sort of technical major, math, science, physics, engineering, something like this. So I thought, well, I got nothing to lose. If I apply and don't get picked, I keep doing what I like doing in the Navy. And if I do get picked, how cool will that be? I get to put on pajamas and talk to school kids. No, that's not what I thought. But I was excited that maybe I could get to go to space. So sure enough, I applied. We have an astronaut selection class about every 4 to 5 years. And I applied in the year 2000 and was not selected. 4 years later, I applied again in 2004 and was fortunate enough to get picked up that time. Now, the first 2 years that you're an astronaut, you're called an astronaut candidate. And it's much like being in school, as you guys are. We spend about half of our day in different simulators. Some of the simulators are just a simple laptop program that you can do at your own desk. Some are a normal-looking room that has some consoles and switches and stuff off in the corner that represent what the spaceship is. All the way up to a full model mock-up of the spaceship where you get in, you strap in, the switches are all in the right spot. Where the windows are, there's digital displays of what you would be seeing and that sort of thing. So we spend about half our time in the classroom, half our time in the simulator, learning all these different pieces and parts of a spaceship. Just like your house or your car, the house has structural walls and a roof to keep you dry. It's got air conditioning system to keep the temperature the right way, keep the air clean. It's got electrical system to provide power. It's got plumbing to give you water. All those different subsystems of your house are required to make it the house that you have. And same thing with the spaceship. You have power generation that can either be done with solar panels like we have on the space station, or on the space shuttle we use these things called fuel cells that converted oxygen and hydrogen together, mixed them up, made electricity, and also made water. So those were pretty cool things. So anyways, you've got all these different systems to keep the spaceship alive. And what we do is we train over and over and over on how to repair, how to respond to problems with these systems, because normally we have communication to Houston where all the experts are, but if we don't, we have to be able to survive on our own and fix stuff and keep the spaceship going. So that's why we train over and over and over and over. It seems like it never ends. But we've become really good, really proficient at our own particular spaceship. So that I passed those 2 years as an astronaut candidate. Then I was kind of waiting in line for my first mission. And kind of like you guys in school, if they said come down and see the principal's office, what's the first thing you go? What, did I do anything bad yesterday? No, I don't think so. I don't know what I did wrong. Well, that's what it's kind of like when you get the phone call, hey, come down to see the chief astronaut, and you're hoping it's for a space, he's telling you're on a crew, but you're not really sure if you're going to get stuck with some crummy job or something. But sure enough, got that call, hey, we want you to be on Space Shuttle mission STS-127. Really, really cool feeling. We started up with my crew of 7 people. The Space Shuttle had 7 seats in it, and all the training is done there in Houston. And we launched and landed from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So that was an exciting period of time as I trained and lead up to that mission. Summer of 2009, I launched on Endeavour. Does everybody know that all the space shuttles are retired now? Yeah, have you heard that before? Yeah, we no longer, the United States, we no longer have a way to get our own astronauts to space. About 3 years ago was when the last shuttle mission flew and landed, and now all the 3 remaining shuttles have been sent to museums around the country. The one I was on, Endeavour, just happens to be in California, Southern California. After that, I was waiting around for another mission. How am I going to get to space? I don't know. We don't have a vehicle. Well, now we buy those seats from the Russians. So all of us taxpayers, we pay the Russian government a lot of money. Like for my training and my launch, it was $57 million that we pay, and then we get a seat in a Russian Soyuz. So my last launch was from a place called Kazakhstan, middle of nowhere town named Baikonur, about a 4-hour flight from Moscow, and launching in this tiny little Russian rocket. Now, before we start the video, I want to kind of compare and contrast the two, the shuttle and the Soyuz, because it's kind of fun to picture. You can think of the space shuttle like a big, heavily loaded up pickup truck. When you're driving in that pickup truck, if your parents turn the wheel quickly, it just lazily responds as you go lumbering down the highway. But if you're driving in this little small, lightweight, zippy sports car, and you turn that wheel, it's going to really respond quickly and wiggle and maybe even go out of control if you're too aggressively on that steering wheel. The shuttle and the Soyuz are similar to that. The shuttle is this big, massive vehicle that can carry tons, literally tons of cargo, and it's very big vehicle, a lot of power, but not super responsive because it's hard to make all that mass super responsive. The Soyuz, on the other hand, is much lighter and instantly responds to the jets as they fire to control it. And I remember coming off the launch pad on the Soyuz and feeling like as the vehicle snapped to some compass heading and it spun around and you could just feel it snapping like this. So that's a difference in the mass. The masses are much different, so therefore the forces that you feel are different. The launch profile is the same. It takes about 8.5 minutes to get to space, regardless of which vehicle you're launching in. And then as soon as those engines cut off, you're in zero gravity. So what I'll do is I'll start the video here just a second and to set the stage, this is, I launched in this month right now, 2 years ago right now, so March of 2013. I was in Russia with my two Russian cosmonaut crewmates, and we spent 6 months on the space station, and here this video kind of talks us through that. We were part of the 35th and 36th crews on the International Space Station. There's been people on that thing since 2001, and a lot of folks don't realize that every day of the year, 365 days, there's people living in space. Right now, there's 3 of them, and we're waiting on 3 more to launch next week. So Pavel was the Soyuz commander, the middle guy there. Sasha Masurkin was the other cosmonaut, and myself. We leave Moscow, we fly down to Baikonur place. We're there for about 2 weeks in quarantine. Quarantine is really intended to keep us healthy and not bring germs and viruses and sicknesses up to the space station. You can see the people that we interact with are all dressed with these medical scrubs and things. But one of the first things we do is go to the actual assembly plant where they're putting our vehicle together. And this is the first time we see our own spaceship, all brand new and shiny. Up until then, we've just been in simulators that are well used and not the real thing. But we get to put our books and pens and pencils, stick Velcro where we want it. It's very common to get sick when you go to space, to put throw-up bags in strategic places throughout the cockpit, little known secret. And then just kind of make sure the vehicle's ready, because the next time we're going to see it is on the launch pad on launch day 2 weeks later. So during those 2 weeks, it's kind of like Groundhog Day. I like to say in the SEAL teams it stands for sleep, eat, and lay around. And that's what we do in Baikonur in quarantine, is we kind of sleep, eat, and lay around waiting for the clock to strike. But during that time, we'll go to some local events, go to this museum, and do our own training to get ready, but basically get focused for the mission. About 3 days before launch, my family came over from Houston, and they were there for those 3 days, and I got to interact with them just a handful of times before launch. The day before the launch, the vehicle rolls out on this rail car and goes up to this, from the horizontal position to the vertical position in a very short time, like 45 minutes, and then it's ready to go. Later on that night, we launched at 2 in the morning, so here we are in the middle of the night walking out. I had just said goodbye to my kids right before we put that suit on, and then we walked to the rocket. You can't hear it now, but there's all kind of noise and screaming and cheering as we're getting onto this bus. And you have to drive the bus because it's about a 20-minute ride out to the pad for obvious reasons. You don't want it to be close. And we get on that bus, and then it's completely quiet. And all you hear is the hum of the cooling fan. That little lunchbox thing is a cooling fan. And a little bit of talking. And it's just this somber drive out to the pad. And you can see the vehicle all lit up with spotlights as you approach it. And all the other vehicles are driving away, and you're the only vehicle driving to the launch pad. And it's really this cool feeling as you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm about to get in that thing. We climb up these little stairs, and there's a tiny little elevator, maybe, I don't know, basically just big enough for the 3 of us to stand there all squished. I had a Russian dude's head all smushed in my nose, and you're just kind of standing there. The elevator rickety up to the top, and then we enter in the little capsule in the very tippity top. Get in about 2.5 hours before launch. That gives them enough time to take all the elevator and the structure away, and we're waiting, and finally 3, 2, 1, and the rocket's light, and off you go. There are windows in the capsule, but at launch they're covered up by these, we call them fairings, which are basically structural things to cover the windows. So you have no sense that you're left the launch pad. You can't see, you just all of a sudden you see numbers start to move, and you feel this rumbling thing, and you feel a little bit as the acceleration picks up, you feel smushed back in your seat, and your cheeks start to droop on your face, and then that's how you kind of know. But the first 10 to 15 seconds, it's a little bit unclear. Are we really off the launch pad, or are we still on? 8.5 minutes, like I said, it's a 3-stage rocket. So what does that mean? That means that one engine fires and gets used up, and that the fuel is gone, and that section falls away, and then another engine fires for the second stage. That gets used up, falls away, and then the final third stage gets us all the way to space. And at the end of those 8.5 minutes, the rockets stop, and you go from having this three times the force of gravity pushing you into the seat to nothing, and you feel suspended. And that's where people get sick, because your brain is telling you that you're spinning all around, but yet you look down at yourself and you're clipped into the seatbelt still. And so there's this disconnect between the two, and it's very disorienting. Most of us take seasickness medication on lockdown to prevent that. 6 hours later, we're catching up to the space station. The computer's doing most of this driving as we're lining up the crosshairs, but we're ready to take over with the controls and drive it on in if we need to. Now, the amazing thing right here is both of those spaceships are going 5 miles a second, 17,500 miles an hour, except the Soyuz is going about 1/10 of a meter per second faster to make it catch up, which is incredible. Our head is right behind that window right there, and then it docks in. You can kind of feel it. You feel a little clunk, and you wait, and then there's these big hooks that drive out and grab onto and smush the two vehicles together. And then we do some leak checks, because we certainly don't want to open the hatch if there's not a good leak, but there's not a good pressure between the two. And then we'll float on in and go. There were 3 people up there, a Canadian guy named Chris Hadfield, Tom Marshburn, an American, and another Russian were there already waiting for us. And Chris Hadfield has a big black bushy mustache, so I thought it'd be fun to put a fake one on there and greet him like that. But you get to the space station now it's going to be your home. And you got to spend the first couple days learning where your stuff is, where are my clothes, where's my food, how do I use the toilet, how do I float around. Just the basic things you got to figure out. And this part of the video sort of talks about the floating aspect of it. It's just a real trip to float. Imagine right in this room, you're floating between the ceiling and the floor. And here's us just floating around. You can see it doesn't take much effort. I'm just using fingertips to push along and make the turns. We can have some pretty dramatic crashes at these intersections of modules. It gives you kind of a good idea of the size of the vehicle. The space station is a large spaceship. It's not the kind of thing where you feel all cramped and tight and wanting to get away from your crewmates. It's plenty big, and oftentimes I wouldn't see my crewmates all the way until lunch, for instance. One of the main thing we do on the space station is research and science and experiments. It comes in all shapes and forms of it. We do a lot with robotics. This is a robonaut, we call him, and he doesn't answer interview questions too well, but what he does do is respond with the virtual reality goggles. So right now he's just inside, but pretty soon, in not too distant future, we'll have him outside the spaceship, and you can manipulate and move things on the outside just robotically. We do a lot in these glove boxes. You can imagine if you have an experiment that has off-gassing or particulate that can float away, you want to contain it. So we use these 2 different size glove boxes to do just that. We are the experiments on a lot of things. We'll eat different foods or do different activities and have to give blood and urine samples and this sort of thing that get analyzed after the mission. One of my favorite things was playing with fire in space. Who doesn't like to do that? And you can get some pretty cool looking flames just by varying the flows of gases and things over that. Now, so that's experiments. We also do a bunch of maintenance. Your car needs a lot of maintenance, so does the space station, both to fix broken things and to prevent things from being broken. This is actually one of the filters of the water system. We reclaim about 95% of our water. So what does that mean? You pee into a toilet and the yellow stuff comes out as drinking water downstream, and the system works pretty good. You guys have a treat. All of your schools have been replumbed, so you have this system set up. I'm just kidding. What else do we do up there? Well, we spend a lot of time, all of our free time looking out the window. We have this cupola window, which is 360 degree window, and you get these views. Oceans and deserts and cities and rivers at night. Just magnificent. And that's where we spend most of our free time, is staring at the planet below us, because it's so fascinating. Everybody likes to know about hygiene and how we keep ourselves clean. We don't have a shower. Your hair grows the same speed, so I found it easier to just cut it all off. You can see behind me there's a mirror for shaving, toothbrush with brushing your teeth. There's no sink to spit the stuff in, so you swallow it. And for those folks that shave, you can't get the gunk out of the blade, so you end up using a blade every day. And then about halfway through my 6 months there, the three people that were there when we arrived, Tom, Chris, and Roman, they left. Pavel, Sasha, and myself, we were only three for about a week and a half. And then Karen and Luca and another Russian guy arrived to get us back up to 6 people. This next portion of the video talks about spacewalks, which are my absolute favorite thing to do while I'm up there. Most of our time we spend inside the ship, but occasionally we get to go out. And this is our cordless drill, big fancy thing with different size sockets that you can put on, just like your parents' drill at home. The spacesuit itself is kind of like a heavy rain jacket. It's all loose and floppy until you put it together and pressurize it to around 4.5 pounds of pressure, and then it gets stiff and rigid. You can see all the switches and dials and things are right here on the front where you can look down and see, because it's really hard to reach anything else. You don't have much sensation in your fingers with those big gloves on, so you have to have all the important things right in front of you. Now maybe you guys have seen the movie Gravity, where they fell off the space station. Well, so we certainly don't want to do that. So we have these things called safety tethers, which are kind of like a dog leash, where it will retract you back to wherever you have it hooked up if you did fall off. It's a small little pulling force to keep you, to return you. But the main thing is don't let go and use your hands to keep you safe. It takes a while on a spacewalk morning. It takes a while to get all dressed up and go through all the safety checks to go out the door. We start that process around 7 in the morning. By around lunchtime or so, we're actually opening the hatch to go outside. And here's what that looks like. It is something else, let me tell you, to be holding on to a handrail, looking down between your toes and seeing the earth go by you at 5 miles a second. It's something that your brain is going, why are you here? You don't need to be here right now. Get back inside. But you pretty much settle into a rhythm, and there's a lot of work to do on a spacewalk. It's a very choreographed event, and there's somebody reading the procedure to us down in Houston, and we're following along as we're doing our repairs or putting in our new experiment or whatever. I've been fortunate enough to be a part of 6 spacewalks. The last one was the most interesting and exciting in sort of a bad way, because my partner, Luca, an Italian astronaut, he had, and you can see me looking in his helmet right there, he had a problem where the cooling water in his backpack was somehow getting into his helmet. So as oxygen was coming into his helmet, so was water. And water was filling up inside his helmet, and it got stuck on his head, and eventually covered his ears, and eventually covered his eyes, and got over his nose, and it was just around his mouth by the time we were able to get back inside here. It was really, really scary. A normal spacewalk is about 6.5 hours, and this happened about an hour into that spacewalk. So it ended significantly early. And even going as fast as we could, it took about 45 minutes to get back in. So there was a period of time where we were racing the water getting into his helmet, hoping that we could be done before it got to his mouth. But it all worked out, and we since know why that water happened, and we fixed that problem, and we're back in business for regular spacewalks. So we talked about experiments and maintenance and spacewalks. what else do we do up there? Well, it takes a whole lot of stuff to keep the space station going. I mean, here in town, we can go to the supermarket, we can go to Walmart or Target or wherever your favorite place is and get stuff. But on a space station, you can't do that. So it all has to be delivered on these different cargo ships. And